Today, I'm sitting down with Mike Catron, host of the Watching the Boxes Fantasy Basketball podcast, continuing our interview analyst series. Let's go balls deep.
I could bet all of the riches that I ever had.
Welcome to another episode of the Balls Deep Fantasy Basketball podcast, brought to you by Fantasy Basketball International. FBI Basketball is the website. FBIbasketball.com is the website. Head over there. My player rank's already up. I'm not sure why, but they're up. We've got all the dynasty stuff rolling with Matt Lawson. And by the time this releases, probably about 2 weeks, we should have started our draft-only leagues for next season. For anyone that is desperate like me for fantasy content, as I said, today I'm joined by Mike Catron, host of Watching the Boxes. I've been on his show a few times. I think maybe you've been on my show once or twice. Mike, how are you, mate?
I'm doing good, Adam, man. It's good to talk to you here in the off season. Apparently there is no off season. It's already prepare for next season already.
That's right. We're recording this 2 days out from the draft. I think is it Thursday this week?
2 days out from the draft, and 2 days after Bradley Beal moves to the Suns.
That's right, and then free agency, and then summer league, and as I said, we're already starting our redraft or draft only leagues for next season. So, not much of an off season. Although, as you said, in Chicago, it is starting to warm up. So people are out and about, and you were telling me about they have block parties for anyone. I mean, I had no idea what they are. Tell people what these block parties are all about.
Chicago is the best city in the summer, possibly anywhere, and I will stand by that. You should, if you. I know it's winter down in Australia, New Zealand, and all of you come visit us in the summer in Chicago. It's the best time to come. We're right by the lake. It feels like an ocean. There is a block party in one neighborhood every single weekend from the middle of May to the middle of September. They shut down the street. It's a major street. All the restaurants come out. It's you drink in the streets, which in America that is weird. And there's bands, concerts, and it's just the weather is great. And people in Chicago, because it is so damn cold in the winter, desire nothing more than to be outside during the summer. So everybody's in a good mood. It's a party. It's party season, and Chicago never stops drinking.
Yeah, look, I think we don't have block parties here. Maybe some of the bigger cities do in Australia, but our winters are cold, not as cold as what you guys get over there.
Not even close.
But it does get cold here. I'm just going to have a look at. I have to do this sometimes to have a look at degrees Fahrenheit, so I can tell you how cold it gets. So this morning where I live, on the radio, they said it was -6, feels like -10 Fahrenheit. That's about 14 degrees.
Okay, that is cold.
Yeah,
that is legit cold.
Yeah.
We had a mild winter, and it only got down to that level just a few times, actually.
Okay. So
our winters are getting more suspiciously milder and milder. It's not a great sign, but we have a lot of fresh water here, so I don't know.
Yeah, no, look, it does get cold. I mean, this is particularly cold, but I think we've got about 3 nights of this, so a lot of ice on the roads. It doesn't snow where I live specifically, but it's only about an hour to the snow from where I live, so we're fairly close to the snowfields here. So a lot of traffic coming through where we live, people heading to the snow. Yeah. So we're about an hour from the snow and an hour from the coast, so right in between. So we could head to the snow this weekend if we want to, or we could go to the coast where it's warmer. Not warm enough to swim, although my kids would probably jump in the water. I'm not sure why, but
that feels way too cold to be swimming.
It is for most people, but not kids apparently.
Kids,
So
they don't have a temperature control. They have no idea what they're doing.
no, they don't. No. So the purpose of this, I mean, if anyone who's been listening, we're up to episode 20 now, so we've been through a lot of analysts. Just finding out a little bit about Mike as a person, what you do, how you got to where you are now in terms of fantasy. So we'll start out with that portion of the show. So you, as I said, you host the Watching the Boxes fantasy basketball podcast, which you've been doing for quite a while. I don't know the exact time frame, but
Yeah, that's a question. I think it might be like 7 seasons now, 7 or 8 years.
Okay, so quite a while.
Yeah.
So in terms of moving into the fantasy space or the basketball space, how did you get sort of to where you are now? Was it always part of the plan, or was it something you fell into at some point?
No, I think it's just something that I've been around. Like basketball has just been something I've been around since I was born. I'm from downstate Illinois. Anybody who listens to the show, obviously, I was just talking about it. I live in Chicago. I grew up in the '90s. Michael Jordan. That's all you need to say. So as a 5'6" white guy, fell in love with the NBA and could never play. Was not, terribly good at shooting, but loved everything about what the game was. And, for international listeners, it might be weird, but obviously if you follow the NBA, college basketball is huge. I grew up near the University of Illinois. So when I was young, they had a really good team. And when I was in college, they had that team that went to the national championship and lost against UNC. So I just have been someone who's been a fan of basketball since as long as I can remember. And fantasy basketball really came about as I was in high school. So I had Jalen Rose on one of my oldest Yahoo teams. He was actually a starter on my team. And me and my friends, we were all into it. We played a league every year for whatever. And luckily I went to a college that I became surrounded by a bunch of other guys who really liked fantasy basketball. We started our own league. Basically the winner, everybody who lost would buy the winner a keg, which was a great reason for everybody just to get drunk because, it's college. And from that, I just was always kind of fascinated with the uniqueness of fantasy basketball. That there are many different ways to play. That I'm a roto over head-to-head type of person, and I love keeper leagues, but I don't like dynasty leagues, which is kind of weird. I kind of like in that middle range of being a roto, keeper, redraft, semi-redraft league, which auctions, of course. And I was playing it so much, and I was getting involved so much. I don't know if you remember ages ago, but I went on Reddit when Reddit was very infantile. Somewhere between when everybody left Dig and went over to Reddit, and there was no fantasy basketball subreddit. So I started one. I'm the originator of the fantasy basketball subreddit. No joke.
All right. So you're the person to blame.
I am the person to blame. And being a mod on Reddit is probably the worst thing you can sign up for. Because it is a full-time job. You get legitimately no credit for anything other than failing. And people always want you to do what they want you to do and complain about literally everything that happened. So there was this cycle of modding that Reddit. First couple years, I just didn't even mod it. It was just a free-for-all. And then I brought some people in, started copying off of fantasy football, got some bots on there, and it started turning kind of cyclical. Everybody would show up brand new, and they would be talking about only their teams, and then we'd have to ban everybody and shove everybody into the normal threads. And I got really, really, really sick of that. But what I started doing is writing. And I started writing legitimately a post called Watching the Boxes. I just thought it was a clever name. And I started out with day one, started writing, hey, this is what I saw in the box scores. Because that's what I do when I look at fantasy basketball, when I'm trying to analyze what's going on in the league, where I want to go, who I want to pick up. I just go and look at the box scores just to stay abreast. If I can't, obviously I'm not going to watch all the games. I try to watch as many as possible. And I just started writing. And what came from that is, I think I wrote for Fantasy Pros for a little bit. I wrote for maybe somebody else. It's hard to remember. And then I ended up writing over at hashtagbasketball.com. And they were basically like, yeah, whatever you want to write, whatever you want to do, we want to put a metric out, head-to-head scores, pace, times, whatever. So they kind of let me experiment, do whatever I want. When I was writing that, this is the origin story of the podcast. Kyle McCune and oh my gosh, I'm gonna forget his name. Matt Smith? No, not Matt Smith. Mark. I can't believe I'm gonna forget this guy's name. It'll come to me. They had a podcast, and Kyle was leaving to go to Basketball Monster, and I guess he was going to drop off this podcast. And Mark reached out to me and said, "Hey, I saw some of your writing. Do you want to be on this podcast?" And I was like, "Oh, sure." So I had like 2 beers and just knocked out a podcast with Mark, and he was like, "Hey, you said you've never done this before. Do you want to do it? That was pretty good. Do you want to do it again?" I was like, "Yes." And I think it was called the Fantasy Basketball Podcast because he was very obsessed with like Google Analytics. So he wanted it to be like literally the Fantasy Basketball Podcast. And that's how I ended up meeting Tyler Watts at Tyler P. Watts on Twitter. I say that all the time on the podcast. It like rolls off my tongue. And we were both co-hosts on this show, like on and off for about a season. And Mark basically retired, technically, I guess. And I reached out to Tyler and I said, "Hey, I was just thinking about doing this podcast." And I did probably like the first like 5 or 6 episodes by myself. And then I was like, I cannot talk to myself. I am no Josh Lloyd. I cannot talk to myself by myself for 35, 45 minutes. I just couldn't do it. I was like, I need someone to bounce stuff off of. And so I reached out to Tyler and he was like, "Yeah, sure." And we've been doing it for like 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, no, look, I get that. Look, it is hard to talk to yourself. I can do it as a one-off or occasionally, but it's so much easier to just sit and have a chat with someone who knows as much as you about fantasy basketball. And interesting with what you said there about how the start of the watching the boxes kind of brand. I think anyone that does fantasy or is into fantasy to the level that we are, you need to be really good at analyzing data and box scores and looking for trends and all of that sort of stuff, because it's impossible to watch every game with the amount that's played. So that's certainly something that I do, is I tend to just follow the box scores. I can't be watching the games because often, I mean, they're on here during the day. So they start at 9 in the morning, 10 in the morning. I'm at work. So
yeah, I always wonder what that would be like to have basketball on that early.
Yeah, look, it's well, I mean, for us, it's normal. So
yeah,
that's
feels like a luxury.
All we're used to. Like I wonder what it would be like for it to be on sort of every afternoon
like a
when
normal
I get home.
hour.
Yeah, I mean, it would depend where I lived, I suppose. You're sort of central, but if you lived, say, on the East Coast, in New York or Philly or something, those West Coast games wouldn't be starting till what, 10 at night?
Yeah, it's like 10:30.
10:30.
I mean, it's even late here. 9:30. The game's over at midnight-ish.
Yeah, so that's sort of 12. Like you're getting ready to head off to bed at midnight or one in the morning. Which, I mean, for me, is I'm a late person. I'm a night person, so I'm usually not in bed till close to midnight anyway. But I do think that for us here in Australia, it makes reporting and writing a little easier because we can do it we can have our dinner 7:30 at night. We can sit down and we can wrap up all the games because they're all done.
Like it's all done, and then you're just like around.
Yeah. That's right. Not sort of doing a lot. So writing blurbs, writing recaps, doing shows, we can do them at a nice time. Whereas if in America, if you want to do a show immediately following the games, it's 1 a.m, which is not a great time to be recording a live show.
No,
I wouldn't think so.
I used to try to do that like really early in the podcast. It was like we're literally gonna go and read all the box scores after
Yeah.
the night's over.
Yeah.
And then it was like we're gonna read the box scores halfway through the West Coast games. How about that? And then
Yeah.
it was like, how about we just do it like the next day? And then it kind of evolved into being like, maybe we don't need to read the box scores every single day, like in February. Like that doesn't. You're not getting a lot of value out of that.
Yeah. And I often think that's a really good benefit for Josh being here in Australia, the same as me, same time zone. He can be basically the first person in the fantasy basketball world to get that game recap out because he's doing it at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, not 1 o'clock in the morning. So,
and that side of the podcast market, he's fantastic at it. I think we tried to, me and Tyler over at Watching the Boxes tried to do it from a kind of a wider perspective. Not that Josh doesn't, but we kind of try to look at longer term trends. And I think our best content is always preseason. Like we really do try to use kind of our revert to the mean method of fantasy analysts analysis that I think sometimes people get very excited on Reddit, Twitter, NBA Twitter, of course, NBA fantasy Twitter, about the next hottest thing. And I know for a fact Tyler's just really, really, really good at those preseason like trends, predictions, statistics. And then I just kind of come in and bumble around and make jokes at Tyler's expense. That's my job.
And look, preseason is getting more important, but getting longer. The preseason has started. We're already talking about next season.
It's crazy.
As I said, my ranks are out. They're going to change. Obviously, there's a lot of things are going to happen in the next month, 2 months. So for you, it's been a mixture thus far with analysts, but fantasy basketball, is it a full-time thing for you? Is there a day job, something that you do that gets in the way of fantasy basketball?
Definitely. My day job is that I'm an enterprise architect. I work in IT for a bank, and it's not great. It's not bad, pays the bills, but it's certainly nothing I'm terribly passionate about. But it affords me the ability to enjoy and spend time working on fantasy basketball. And I wanted to at Mark Fred Bob Mark Roberts. I would have killed myself if I would have ended up forgetting Mark Roberts, one of the greatest rankers of predictions of stats for the next season I've ever seen in the 8 years I've been doing it.
And so for the bank job, let's call it the bank job, is that like something that was always like, did you said you've already said you went to college. Is that what you were working towards, or was that a change of career?
No, I've always I went to school for computer science. So I definitely focused on kind of more data centric things, and which I think easily leads into thinking that fantasy sports are incredibly fun to do. And I just kind of ended up going to grad school and picking up a job at an insurance company and then a bank. And it's just kind of like I have a career. It seems to be people seem to want to keep me employed. They don't. They haven't gotten rid of me yet. So like I'm always like, all right, cool. I'll just keep doing this until they tell me I should leave. Yeah,
right. Well, and as you said, it pays the bills and it lets you keep doing fantasy basketball. So that's
absolutely.
And so we spoke before we jumped on, spoke about YouTube and potentially spending too much time on YouTube and online shopping. So outside of fantasy basketball, personally for me, it's movies. I love movies. I love TV shows. And I love just socializing and hanging out with friends. What are the sort of things that you like to do when you're not either at the bank doing the bank job or doing fantasy basketball?
I'm at the bank doing the least amount of time possible. I have like a ton of things that I'm interested in. I like to think that I like to know a little bit about everything, but I don't know a lot about anything. And what my biggest thing that I do right now is that I am in a monthly sketch show here in Chicago. It's called the Not That Late Show, and
Okay.
a buddy of mine, shout out Justin if he's listening, the started this about 3 or 4 years ago. Well, yeah, about 4 years ago because we took a hiatus during COVID. We're coming up on our kind of 3 year anniversary of doing this show in Chicago. It is a late night show. There's a host, there's a monologue, there's a guest. Recently, we had the candidate for Chicago mayor who won and is the mayor of Chicago right now, Brandon Johnson, was
Okay.
on the show. So that was a really cool get. And there's like a band, and we do sketches in the middle, and I write sketches, I edit video, and I do the tech for the show, and it's a lot of fun. It's like a really great way to like have a creative outlet, which my day job is not terribly creative.
Yeah.
And so it's at NTL Show if anyone wants to.
Okay.
Number one, check us out on Instagram, but two, if you're in the Chicagoland area, come check us out.
And so is that? I mean, that's obviously a bit of a hobby.
Yeah.
Sort of. Well, a hobby, but is that? I mean, it sounds to me like when I hear you talk about that sort of thing, it sounds. I automatically think, something like Saturday Night Live, but a much smaller version, maybe.
Yeah, it's a live show.
Yep.
100%. It's in front of a theater. It's in front of people. Occasionally,
Okay.
they make me get on stage, which is always it's nerve wracking, but it's like it's really really like fun. There's like a dopamine rush to having other people in person laugh at something you've done, like enjoy something you've done, and I think that keeps me coming back. It's certainly just it's a once a month show, and it's something we kind of all do for the love of the game. We stay afloat, like we get enough money to keep renting the theater to keep doing
Yeah.
it, so that's cool. A lot of shows in Chicago don't end up that well, so we will take it. And yeah, I don't know, that is probably the thing. It does take up time, like it's
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it a full-time job because it's not, but like it's a part-time job.
And so is that something that I guess projecting forward 5 years, 10 years, a space that you would see yourself working in professionally, like doing that, leaving the bank job and doing something like that somewhere?
I mean, yeah, ideally, I that would be great. That'd be fantastic. I think that's easier said than done.
Yeah.
But I think the creative thing, doing something creative, doing video editing, which I actually really enjoy doing, and then like creating like stories, creating humor, creating something that other people enjoy is much more interesting to me than what I do. And ideally, that if that got bigger, I would happily leave my day job.
Yeah.
Though I did see that the Chicago Bulls just put out an opening for a data analytics director, and
Get that application in.
I might be putting my application in actually. I don't know if they look through my tweets and then search Reinsdorf, I might not get the job.
Well, I don't think you'd be the only one with those tweets, so
Probably not.
I think you'd be safe. But hey, look, they can only say no.
That's
So,
true. We'll see.
Worth asking. So again, I get mixed responses from this. Is traveling something that you like to do when you have some free time? And if so,
Yes.
any favorite places or locations that you are aspiring to be able to visit at some point?
I mean, yes, absolutely. I travel. I think I've traveled a lot. Like, I'm from like a very small country, like a town of like 6,000 people, cornfield town. And one of the things people always, when I go back home or visit relatives or whatever, they're like, "Oh, you're always traveling. You're always traveling. How do you afford that? How do you do all this stuff?" It's like I don't have like hardly any other hobbies that cost like money. Like I don't build work on a truck, or like I don't like like I don't know, redo my house every 3 years. What I spend my money on is really traveling and eating, and I kind of travel to eat.
Yeah.
I guess I've been a whole bunch of places. Actually, I got the travel bug in college. I'd never been anywhere. Like I've only been to like 2-3 states. And then at 19, I took a month-long semester in China, and it kind of like broke my brain to see how big the world was.
Yeah.
And then I had this like great desire to travel all the time. So I in the States, I really try to travel for either just like the national parks, just get out hiking, or beer. I travel to go to breweries.
Yeah.
I was just in Portland, Maine a few weeks ago at Allagash, a fantastic beer. But if I have places that I've loved, the where I've been, I mean, there's so many, but I desire to go to like Australia, New Zealand again. I really had a great time when I was there, and I was much younger, and I had way less money, and I pretty sure I pinched a nerve that lasted for like 2 weeks after the trip because I was sleeping in the back of a van.
Yeah.
And so I like prefer to like maybe like spend a little extra money and have a nicer camper van. And I mean, this is gonna sound bougie, but I love the south of France.
It does, but you're okay to say that.
Yeah, I like to say that I'm like a high-low person. I love Taco Bell and I love foie gras. Like those are things I love. Like I love the French Riviera, and I like the Bama Shores.
Okay. So yeah, well, no, you're quite worldly compared to some people that I've spoken with, and you've given me an opportunity for a really good segue because now we're going to talk about Victor Wembanyama. So, very well done. Thanks for that. So we're very close, as I said. To this is being recorded just before the draft. We're all fairly certain we know that he's going to San Antonio. From a fantasy perspective, looking ahead to next season, as I said, I've done my ranks, so I know where I have him. But where it is very early, but where would you have him in your ranks for next season? And I guess two parts: where would you be hoping to get him in a draft? But then the second part is where do you actually think he will be going in drafts?
That's the real question, right?
Yeah.
And that's when we do our preseason stuff, that is literally like the conversation we have for every single player. It's like, where should this guy be going? And where's the consensus that where he's going to go from the rest of the world? And chances are, like, we've always said like the hype around Zion's too high. Even if Zion stayed healthy, you're getting him at like you're paying the second round price for a guy who has flaws in his fantasy period.
Yep.
Victor's flaw. Does he have any flaws in his fantasy game? Question mark. I have no idea. I don't think so. I have not done my rankings yet, but like blocks alone, when you're a rookie who can block shots, that usually bodes well. And so he really wouldn't have to do a whole lot else other than get those 2.5 blocks a game, which I think he could do, to be in that like top 40, like top 30, right? Like, he's in the perfect situation. If you want to talk about conspiracy theories, there's only one team that like the NBA wanted him to go to, and it was certainly one of the best franchises and one of the best run operations. All the rest of the franchises that were in contention, it's like you don't know what you're doing. We've seen you not do it over and over and over. So it makes perfect sense in Spurs. Makes perfect sense that they'll build around him immediately. Yep. So I don't know why he wouldn't get plenty of opportunity there. I'm stalling because I'm trying to think of. I would take him. I might take him in my top 25, definitely my top 30.
Yeah, so I think I have him. I just updated my ranks following the Chris Paul, the whole Chris Paul, Bradley Beal thing. And I think, and I had a look, and I think I've got Wembanyama at about 30, 31, something like that.
That seems fair. I feel like I try not to get really hyped about rookies because like that's the biggest mistake ever. And I don't feel like I don't think 30's hype. I think it's like, worst case scenario, he's like a top 50 guy. Barring he's healthy, right? And then the best case scenario is I don't know.
Yeah.
Especially long term, if you're in a keeper league, dynasty league, Unfortunately, everyone loves a hot rookie, and all it's going to take is one summer league game against people who are never going to be playing in the league, where he
Yep.
has like 35, 10, 5 blocks, 5 assists. Everybody, he's going to go in the second round. Maybe even, I hope nobody takes him in the first round, but it feels like he's going to be a second round player right now.
Yeah, I'd probably agree. I could see someone taking him right at the back end of the first round.
Yes.
But yeah, look, I think his ADP is going to be, I don't know, mid-teens, 15, something.
That's way
15,
too high.
16, which is too high. Look, I mean, maybe he is that good, but I think around 30 is, as you said, fairly safe because minimum, I think he's top 50. And I think a really good, not a direct comparison, but if you have a look at what Walker Kessler was able to do at the back end of this season, purely on field goal percentage, blocks, rebounds, he was a top 50 guy down the stretch. And Wembanyama can hit threes as well.
Yeah, now add shooting. Now add threes.
Yeah, so obviously the field goal percentage might not be quite as good, but free throws are better. He'll hit threes. He could, in theory, get more blocks. So I like him around that range.
I'd be happy with like getting him in the third round, right? I'd be like, if he's around like the third round, and I'm sitting there like, well, he's not going to be around in the fourth round. And maybe his like bell curve of quality is fourth round, but like that's one of the few players I think you got to like that bell curve so wide, you definitely got to take him in the third round at this point.
Yeah, I think come the start of the third round, he'll be gone in every league. I think
certainly.
Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, we've done some dynasty mocks already, and he's in dynasty. He's going at pick 2 and pick 3. Jokic is still number 1.
That seems high.
It's high. He's going sort of around where Luka is going.
Luka's already doing it. You know what I mean?
Luka's
like that's the one thing
I
want to caution everybody about, right?
Yeah.
Is like the hype is going to be so high on this dude.
Yeah.
And I think you could probably list 25 dudes who you would 100%, I think anybody could sit around and go, these are 25 dudes I 100% want over Victor, period, for just 1 year.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, I think, but as we know, like the hype is going to be huge, and summer league's going to be interesting because I don't know how much he'll play in summer league.
Yeah, I don't know either.
He's a little bit, somewhat unique in that he's only just finished his season in Europe, whereas a lot of these college guys have been done for 2 months now. So the Spurs are almost going to want to rest him, I think, a little bit.
Yeah.
So
that might be the one thing I wonder, right? That might be the one thing is like there is absolutely no reason to rush him. There is absolutely no reason to give him 34 minutes a game. There is absolutely no reason not to sit him if he tweaks anything ever at all. The Spurs are playing, and they know how. They're smart. They're playing a long-term game. They're going to continue to play a long-term game. And that might be the only red flag that I'd like to raise right now. Just put my stake in it. Is that he's going to be great, but this year he might be just good. But even if he's just good, it's still a top 50 player.
It is, but as you said, there's a chance he only plays 50 games.
Yeah.
Because the average now is mid-60s, 66, 68. That's sort of what you're looking at from an average player. And we saw what the Spurs did down the stretch last season. Devin Vassell was resting every second game. Keldon Johnson was resting. So who's to say they're not? I don't think they're of the opinion, unless they make some trades, they're not going to be of the opinion of, hey, we're a contender now and we want to play and we want to push hard. It's going to be, no, look, we've got this guy, we're going to build, but maybe we can get another top 5 pick next season. I don't know.
Why not?
It's going to be very interesting anyway, to say the least.
Yeah. And people, you know your leagues better than we do. Like hype is hype, and that means that is price. And if you get Victor and you can move him because everyone's so hyped about him, then he kind of was worth that price, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it might be if you do draft him, say you draft him at pick 20, and he comes out of the gates and he's
red hot
first round guy for the first 2 weeks. I would see and it's a redraft league, I would seriously consider trading him away to get a top 15 player back, because it could be that the last month of the season he's not immediately playing as much. Yeah. So a lot of strategy going to be there. So that will do it for the show. Before I let you jump off and go and do whatever you need to do, tell people what you've got going on. It's obviously sort of an off season, but what's coming up over the next couple of months in the lead up to the season?
Yeah, Watching the Boxes is going to be, I hope, we are going to be doing a live Twitch stream for the draft, which I guess is in a couple days. I just got to get Tyler on there. And if you want to come on, Adam, feel free. I feel like everybody's gonna be doing something for the draft, so like I kind of wanted just to hang out on Twitch casually and have people come on at twitch.tv/watching the boxes. We're gonna try to use Twitch a little bit more. I like it. I think it's like that back and forth interaction is really good. But we usually spin up the podcast in August, when we start doing team previews, start doing mock drafts, and really getting into the nitty-gritty of analyzing what we think is going to happen in the upcoming season. But don't put it past us on a crazy free agency. I think it's going to be a crazy free agency this year.
I hope so.
Every team's going for a championship in the West, so that's interesting by itself. And for some reason, the Bulls are still not tanking, so I don't.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's happening there. For. No,
but we'll see. But yeah, I mean, we're just gonna be putting out all of our season previews at Watching the Boxes on wherever you download podcasts.
Yeah, and so you can follow Mike at Watch the Boxes. I think
it is at Watch the Boxes, and of course Tyler at Tyler P. Watts.
Indeed. So that, as I said, that will do it. You can head over to fbibasketball.com to check out all of our content, player ranks, dynasty, and our leagues, which by the time this releases will have started. You can follow this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Give us a thumbs up if you are watching on YouTube, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That would be fantastic. Until next time, catch up.
You just listened to another episode from the Fantasy Basketball International Podcast Network. Thanks for joining us. And for more information about joining our community, please check out our website at fbibasketball.com.